Hello everyone and welcome. In this lecture we'll continue with concatenation on data frames and we'll look at the access argument. We've seen that we can call pandas concat method and we can pass our data frame objects that we want to concatenate, and last time we saw that we can pass the keys argument, and in this lecture we'll see the axis argument. Okay, so let's create a new data frame and then we'll save that in a variable called data frame 5. So pd dot data frame, and we'll create our new data frame by passing a dictionary key and value combo as we did before. Let's say B, and then values will pass a list containing, let's say B2, B3, B5, and B6. Let's pass another key and value combo. Let's say D, and then for value we'll pass D2, D3, D5, and D6. Let's add one more key and value combo. Let's say F will be our key, and then for our value we'll pass a list containing F2, F3, F5, and F6. So let's also pass an index, and for index we'll pass 2, 3, 5, and 6. So if I call my data frame 5 object, I get, we have 3 columns B, D, and F, axis 2, 3, 5, and 6. Okay, let's call our first data frame object. So we have ABCD 0, 1, 2, 3. Let's try to concatenate data frame 1 and 5. Let's say pd dot concat. I'll pass data frame 1 and data frame 2. So this is the same as like saving these two data frames in a list object and then passing the list object here. Instead of doing that, we can simply pass this data frames as one list containing those data frames. Okay, let's run this. Data frame 1 and 5, the one we just created, data frame 5. Let's run that. So here we have 0, 1, 2, 3 from our first data frame, then 2, 3, 5, and 6 from our second data frame. So that's the default concatenation without passing any access. How about if we pass an axis? Let's say I pass an axis and I set it to be equal to 1. So this means concatenated along the axis 1, along y-axis. So in this case, we'll get a different result. Let's run it. So here we have A, B, C, D from our data frame 1, A, B, C, D, and then B, D, and F from our second data frame, the one we just created. So we are concatenating it along axis is equal to 1, along the y-axis. Right? So any missing values will have no value, since our first data frame doesn't have any of these values. And similarly, our second data frame does not have 0, 1, and 2 index. And our first data frame doesn't have values for index 5 and 6. By default, any concatenation that we do is, by default, axis is equal to 0. So this is the same as what we got. This is the same as saying not passing any axis at all. So that's the default value. If I run this also, I'll get the same result. Okay, good. Next, let's look at how we can use the join axis parameter or argument. Okay, we'll see how we can use this join axis and join parameter. First, let's see this join argument, and I'll show you how we can use the join axis parameter. Let's look at an example. So pd.concat, let's say we want to concatenate our first data frame. Let's look at another example. Let's consider our second data frame. Let's say data frame 2, and then the data frame that we just created, data frame 5. Okay, let's run that. We have A, B, C, D, and F in our indexes. So first data frame, which is data frame 2, and second data frame, which is data frame 5. And let's pass the axis parameter, axis argument. Axis is equal to 1. We just saw that. It will concatenate it along axis is equal to 1. Next, let's use the join argument, and let's say it to be equal to inner. What do you think I'll get in this case? Okay, to help us the result, let's call our two data frames separately. So data frame 2 and then data frame 5. So inner means it will join the two data frames. Think of it as an intersection. So wherever their indexes intersect, it will join them by using those. It will join the two data frames by using those indexes that are common in both of the data frames. In our example, data frame 2 has indexes 4, 5, 6, and 7, and data frame 5 has indexes 2, 3, 5, and 6. So they intersect at indexes 5 and 6. So the result will have two rows which are indexes 5 and 6. So let's run it and show you. So here our result has only two indexes, 5 and 6. Similarly, let me copy this and let's see the result on data frame 1 and 5. If we call data frame 1, we have indexes 0, 1, 2, and 3. And data frame 2, we have indexes 4, 5, 6, and 7. So what do you think will be the result? The result of this concatenation. Yeah, we don't have any indexes that intersect, right? So if we run the pd.concat method on our, and then pass the join argument as inner on data frames, we saw 1 and 2, and run this, we don't get any result since they don't have any intersecting indexes. Okay, let's see the last data frame that we created, data frame 5. So here we have indexes 2, 3, 5, and 6. And if we concatenate data frame 1 and 5 and pass the join argument, that will be concatenated along indexes 2 and 3, since those two indexes are common. Let's quickly look that and run this. We get that. Next, let's quickly look at the join access argument. So similarly, pd dot, let me copy and paste it. So we have access is equal to 1, and then instead of join, we'll pass the join access argument, and let's set this to be equal to our data frame 5 dot index. What do you think will happen? So this will concatenate our two data frames, data frame 1 and 5, by using data frame 5's index. So the resulting concatenated data frame will have 4 rows with indexes 2, 3, 5, and 6. Let me run it and show you. Here we got an error. It says unexpected keyword argument join access. Oh, this should be join access with an E. Let's run it again. Okay, so we have indexes 2, 3, 5, and 6. So that's how we can do concatenation along bypassing the join access argument. Similarly, we can concatenate it by passing this join access argument, and let's set that to be equal to data frame 1.index. In this case, it will the concatenated result will contain the indexes 0, 1, 2, and 3. So if we run this, we get 0, 1, 2, and 3. So this part is from our first data frame. That's why all of the values are present. Whereas this part is missing because our data frame 5 object does not have indexes 0 and 1. Similarly here, we are concatenating it by passing this join access argument and then setting it to be equal to data frame 5's index. So this part is from the data frame 5 object, so all the values are present, whereas our data frame 1 object does not have indexes 5 and 6, so we see not a number or missing value here. Okay, to summarize, we saw how we can pass the access argument, and then by setting it to be equal to 1, we can concatenate data frames along the y-axis, and by default we saw that this axis is 0, and then we saw how to use the join argument, and finally we set join to be equal to inner, and then finally we saw how to use the join access argument. Thank you everyone, and I'll see you at the next lecture.